Well, hello, and welcome to another lesson of the Focus on Contentful course. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Send me any questions, comments, ideas. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you can all hear me okay. It looks like the stream is going really well here, so that's a good thing. Today I have a special guest presenter. He's actually back. He was in the Content Modeling Weekly, I think about a year ago almost, so can't believe it's been that long. But his name is Ante Šepić, and he's a product demo engineer at Contentful. He's a really cool guy, very knowledgeable, and he's going to show us how to perform bulk content updates in Contentful in three different ways. One using the CMA, the Content Management API, another one using the actual authoring tool, and then a custom app. So we're going to get into that in just a second. But you know how this works. It works by me telling you a little bit about headlesscreator.com. Get your free account. For those of you watching live, thank you so much for watching live, but get your free account. That way you can get this lesson on demand in about an hour. Plus, you'll have access to all the other lessons of the Focus on Contentful course. And there's lots of stuff you can see right there, not only by Ante, but also by a whole bunch of other presenters. So there's a lot of stuff up there. Make sure you get your free account. You'll have access to that. You'll also have access to my Content Modeling Weekly course, which, you know me, I love content modeling, so you'll learn a lot of that. And there's like 46 lessons there now. And then a bunch of other focus on courses, and then the Discover Headless Tech course where you have interviews. Also, for those of you can check out upcoming interviews here. I also have interviews in English, and I've introduced interviews en español for those of you in Latin America or Spanish speaking in general around the world. So anyway, that's it. That's the marketing. I'm not doing any more marketing for you. We're done. So what I'm going to do right now is, you know how this works. I'm going to go ahead and restart the intro, and for the on-demand version, there will be absolutely no marketing whatsoever, and we'll get started in just 10 seconds. We'll see you. Well, hello, and welcome to another lesson of the Focus on Contentful course. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. You have no idea how long it took me to be able to do this and actually hit that email down there. I've always done hit me here, and I always messed it up. So it took me a little practice there, but I got it. Today I have a special guest presenter. His name is Ante Šepić, and he's back. He was here, I would say, almost a year ago in the Content Modeling Weekly course. But he's a product demo engineer at Contentful, and he's going to show us how to perform bulk content updates in Contentful, specifically in three different ways. One using the authoring tool, another one using the CMA, the Content Management API, and the third one using a custom app. Now, I'm not going to tell you anything else about him because I'm actually going to bring him in. So let's get Ante in. Ante, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Marcel. Again,
I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you. Likewise.
Now, you're in Germany, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, live from Berlin.
Live from Berlin. Yeah. That's awesome. I just ended up watching a German miniseries. I forgot the name of it, but on Netflix. We have a lot of foreign films here. But well, welcome back. I'm glad to have you here. Real quick, tell us, your product demo engineer. Tell us what is that?
Sure. So my role at Contentful is basically to represent Contentful in the best light possible by building cool projects and inspiring others. So because Contentful is a technical product, sometimes you need something more visual and shiny to showcase and inspire existing and potential customers. So that's what our demo team does. We basically take Contentful, which is already awesome, and then integrate it with other projects and showcase different use cases for potential customers to see how they can also integrate Contentful into their new or existing projects as well.
Now, having said that, that makes you're a really good developer. I mean, I personally experience. Well, I mean, I'm telling you, you're a good developer. You don't have to admit it. I'm just telling you, and I'm telling everybody there. He's a really good developer. You've done a bunch of stuff, right? In the Content Modeling Weekly, there's an app that you wrote on reverse engineering content models. They can check it out. But how did you get into development? I mean, what attracted you to development?
That's a good question. I think I got into web development basically through another CMS called WordPress, or actually even Joomla before then. Basically, I had all these different side projects of mine, and I started with like what was available out there: Joomla, WordPress, all those like point and click things. But then from time to time, you run into things that you cannot do just through existing plugins. You have to like get your hands a bit messy. So I started being introduced to this world of HTML and CSS, changing visuals of my website, and one thing led to another. I was customizing my projects more and more, and I started falling in love with coding, and that's what brought me here today. It was a gradual journey, a long one, but I'm glad I made it. Awesome.
So I didn't know. So I guess if you did WordPress, you must have done PHP, obviously.
Yes, I did.
I did a lot of PHP in way long time ago. Yeah.
Yes, I've kind of fallen out of love with it before it started being awesome again. Now it's again a cool thing. I think. Yeah,
is it again a cool thing? I thought JavaScript was everything.
Yeah, JavaScript is like the new cool kid on the block, but I think PHP is also like people still enjoy writing PHP, and I think still it's a good language. Nowadays, I prefer JavaScript's syntax, but yeah, with Laravel frameworks like Laravel, people can be super productive with PHP as well. So yeah, whatever you prefer, you can build anything.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we're going to jump in right now to do it, but before we do, I always like to end my interviews with something personal. So let's pretend you weren't in technology. What is Ante doing? What else would you pick in life to do? If you couldn't touch computers.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would probably play piano.
Oh, you're a musician.
No, I'm not a musician because I spend too much time on my computer. But I was a musician in my younger years. I was actually playing like tambourine, but then, yeah, piano was always something beautiful to me. I was like listening to it, and I always had a desire to learn how to play it, but like it takes a lot of dedication and effort.
Takes a lot of dedication.
And I'm already putting a lot of effort into my current craft. So, but yeah, if I couldn't touch another computer for the rest of my life, and if musical career actually could make you some money for other than like being in top 1%, yeah, I would probably play a piano, I think.
I would argue that's almost like a computer because it has a keyboard, right? So you have to have a keyboard, right?
Is that cheating then? Yeah, good point.
All right, Ante, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and show your screen here. We can see your screen. Everybody, if you have questions, there's a chat. Type in your questions there. I'll go ahead and ask Ante. Ante, if I have questions, I'll jump in. But I'm going to let you take over.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcelo. So yeah, as Marcelo quickly introduced, we're going to do bulk editing in Contentful. So what do I mean by bulk editing? So from day to day, you might be working in Contentful, you're editing your entries, and that's perfectly fine. But sometimes you need to do a lot of the same change or a similar change to a lot of entries at once, right? So say you have hundreds of entries and you need to make a small update, like programmatically replace something with another string, some string with another string. One way to do it, of course, is go entry by entry, open each entry in Contentful, click, make a change, publish, then do it for another entry, and that works if you have like a small number of entries. But as soon as you get into tens or hundreds of entries, like you can use there are better ways to spend your time. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to introduce a couple of ways to do it in Contentful. There are two ways that I will be covering that are more technical, and then a third one which is more for a non-technical audience, but also for a technical one. So I'm immediately going to get started with the first approach. So because Contentful is a headless CMS, right? And it's built API first. And that means that also whatever you can do in the web app itself, you can actually do through an API interface that they provide as well. And in Contentful, that's called the Management API. And that's what I'm going to use first to demonstrate bulk editing. So in this scenario, I have 6 blog posts. And again, you can imagine there are 600 of them on an actual website, but for demo purposes, it's going to be enough. So I have these 6 entries, and I'm going to do 2 basically edits to it. So first of all, I have this internal name field that contains a brand of my imaginary website. So it's called Wallet, right? And let's pretend that Wallet was acquired by Headless Creator. So I want to replace Wallet by Headless Creator in all of the blog post titles. So again, I could do one by one through Contentful, but I don't want to do that. And then the second thing is, in this blog post page, I have this field called author. Let me close this. So I have this field called author. So when I started this blog, it only had one author. It worked fine. Now I have multiple authors working for my company, and sometimes they collaborate on blog posts, right? So I want to be able to feature multiple authors for a specific blog post. So what I've done already before we started this, I've created this new field called authors. So this previous author field is a single reference field. As you might know, in Contentful, you can reference other entries from entries, and you can choose between a single reference and multiple reference. So when I was initially setting up this blog, I only had one single reference because I thought I have one author per blog post. I'm just going to do single reference. Now I need multiple. So what we want to do is, we don't want to lose this information. So I could just delete the author field, but I would lose previous authors of all blog posts. So what I want to do is migrate actually this single reference author to the multi-reference authors field. So that's another change that we're going to be doing. So first change, search and replace in the blog post title. Second change, migrating from a single reference to a multi-reference so you can support linking multiple entries. So let's get started. First thing, Contentful Management API that I mentioned. So this is like the most low-level way you can approach this task. Actually, there's one lower level. So what I'm going to be using is this JavaScript client called Contentful Management JS. Pretty simple, which basically sits on top of Contentful Management API. So you can call Contentful APIs from any language, but because I'm using JavaScript, Contentful already provides handle library for me. There are libraries for other languages as well. So if you're using some other languages, check those out. But I'm going to be using the JavaScript library here. So I'm immediately going to jump in. I've set up my project here already, and I'm going to get started. So the first thing that we need to do with Contentful Management JavaScript library is basically instantiate our client. To do that, we need to tell it, okay, I'm going to be working on this space, so give it a space ID. I'm going to be working in this environment, give it an environment ID. And here's my access token, which basically tells Contentful who is making those changes, so it knows that, okay, you are indeed allowed to do it. So let me quickly get this.
While you do that, I'm going to ask you about the access tokens, because with the CMA, you have to get one of those personal tokens, right? That's attached to a user.
Correct.
Do you recommend having a user that is just for API calls versus attaching it to a real user if that user, let's say, leaves the organization? Are there any best practices? I know this isn't part of this demo, but are there any best practices when it comes to the CMA tokens that you recommend?
Yeah. That's a good question, Marcel. So yeah, you've touched on the right point. So I'm going to be doing this one-off change here. So I'm going to be using my personal management access token. If you have some systems that need to access Contentful, sometimes we do recommend Contentful users to have basically what's called a system user,
right,
in Contentful, and that it's not a real person, right? But that way, that person never leaves
the organization.
So you don't risk deleting this person. Suddenly, that person doesn't have access to the API. that person was in the company for a long time. You have multiple projects. Some of them might be legacy. You might have forgotten about them. They might be before you joined, and then stuff breaks, right? So it is indeed better if you're going to be integrating this into some kind of a system that runs like some kind of a deployment or some kind of a scripted migration. Yeah, we actually sometimes it is better, yes, to use this system user and then generate token for the system user, and then basically that way you never run the risk of accidentally deleting this user and forgetting about their token.
And all your code breaks everywhere, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
But yeah, good question. And yeah, so to iterate, because this token is bound to the person, to the user in Contentful, it can do everything you can do, right? So if I create a management token under my account, if I have access to a space, that token can also access that space. If I don't have access to a space or organization, environment, whatever, that token also won't be able. So this way you can also very granularly specify, okay, this token can do this, this, and that. So let me get started. So I'm going to be importing create client method. Create client from Contentful Management, and I'm going to do client because, okay, so as I said, you need to provide some details to Contentful when you're instantiating your client. So there are two ways to instantiate Contentful Management client. I'm going to be using the plain type, and basically it was added a bit later, I think. And basically what it allows you to do is you provide the defaults for your methods. So when you use Contentful Management JS client, you need to constantly tell it, okay, I'm working on this space, I'm working on this environment library. With plain client, you can set defaults, and you save on some network calls because you don't have to first fetch the space and then fetch the entries, etc., etc. You fetch the environment. You can just tell it, okay, use this space ID, use this environment ID, and in the background it will do everything. So I prefer the plain type. It's documented in the GitHub documentation, so you can check it out. But you can also start with your regular one. So I'm going to do. So as I said, I'm going to set some defaults. So environment ID I've created in my space. Contentful has this thing called environments, which are basically the ways to separate your space for development purposes. And I created 3 different environments. So I have Contentful Management, which is where I'm going to be demonstrating bulk editing with Contentful Management API or JS library. Then I have Contentful Migration for the migration library. And then finally, the third one is called Revise, where I'm going to demonstrate bulk editing with my app that I've created. And let's start with Contentful Management environment. So again, I have these entries. So I'm going to be environment, and then I have you'll see me use specific constants here in my JavaScript. I've already populated my constants.ts file so that I can reference my personal token and space ID, so that I don't have to look those up. So space ID, Contentful space, and then.
And while you're doing that, another best practice that I know we do a lot is when we're doing any kind of changes through the CMA or any kind of bulk changes, create, as you explained with environments, create a temporary environment, run those changes there to make sure they worked, verify, and then run it in master. Don't ever do any of this stuff. Kind of like the disclosure, right? Kids, don't try this at home. Don't ever do this stuff in master. Always create a temporary environment that you run against, and then you can delete that environment and then run it for real.
Exactly. That's the beauty of Contentful environments. You basically create them. They copy all the content that you already have, all the content types, all the assets, so you can safely run your bulk editing, especially with bulk editing, as you said. You don't want to do it in production. I mean, Contentful does keep snapshots of your entries in the primary environment, so you won't lose your data, most likely, unless you go deleting entries. But it is better to do these kind of things in separate environments. You can quickly verify, okay, this actually works and does what I wanted to do, and then come back and do it in the primary environment, or even promote this new environment
as production. Right, that's what we do actually. We create a copy, run it there, verify is good, and then change the alias pointer to the new copied environment, and now that's production. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great way to do it, because then you don't risk making changes that you didn't want to make. And by promoting this new environment to the primary one, you can always revert to the old one in case you realize
something
later,
went wrong. Exactly.
Something's wrong. Okay, so we have this client here. So what we're going to do is basically we need to tell it what we want to do. So I'm going to say await client dot client dot space. So get many. So I'm going to be getting multiple entries. So I need to provide some query details. And first of all, I want to provide a content type. So my content type is post. I want to be editing only these, and I'm going to be assigning these to the variable because we'll need to reference it later. So what else? I want to say order, and I'll explain a bit later why we want a consistent order. I always use created that, because if you have pagination, so right now in my space, I only have 6 entries, right? So we can edit them all at once, no problem. But if you have hundreds of entries, you will not be editing all of them at once. You have pagination. And if you use something like an updated order, as you're making updates, when you switch pagination to another page, you might run into problems because your ordering changed. Created that is a stable property of an entry. It's always a fixed date, so it's better to use this when you're doing bulk edit. Okay, so I have entries. So what I'm going to do is for every entry, and the items. So basically, what get many returns you can see here. Actually, I'm gonna. So it has items. These are all the entries that match. You have limit, skip, total. So as I said, for when you have hundreds of entries, you need to also take care of pagination, because you can only get up to 1,000 entries in one network request from the management API. And if you have more, you will want to do implement pagination. So you want to take care of that. So let's see. Okay, so now I have access to each entry, right? So I'm going to say await client